In 1944, 500,000 vehicles across Europe were not running on gasoline. They were running on wood. Trucks, tractors, buses, boats, all powered by a system fed with nothing more than wood chunks gathered from the forest floor. Germany alone had 500,000 of these vehicles in operation. Sweden had 73,000. Finland had converted nearly every bus and heavy truck in the country. This was not a desperate wartime improvisation assembled from desperation and baling wire. This was a technology that had existed and been refined since the early 1800s, documented in engineering literature, commercially manufactured, and widely understood by anyone who had not been told by a fuel company that it was unnecessary. When petroleum took over the energy market in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, wood gasification did not fail. It was made economically irrelevant, first by cheap oil prices, then by the infrastructure that locked farmers and households into a purchasing relationship with fuel suppliers that has never been broken since. Amish farmers never entered that relationship. They were running wood gas systems before petroleum existed. They kept running them after petroleum arrived, and they are running them today on farms where no fuel bill has ever been paid and where the energy to cook, heat, and power equipment comes from the same woodlot that has been supplying it for 200 years. To understand why wood gasification works and why it was suppressed rather than simply outcompeted, it is necessary to understand what the process actually does at the chemical level. Because the petroleum industry spent considerable effort convincing the public that burning wood was primitive, inefficient, and inferior to refined petroleum products. The reality is the opposite of that narrative in almost every measurable dimension except convenience of purchase. Wood gasification does not burn wood. It chemically transforms wood into a combustible gas by heating it in an oxygen-limited environment, a process called thermochemical conversion. When wood is heated to approximately 700 degrees Celsius without sufficient oxygen to allow full combustion, it does not burn, it breaks down. The complex carbon chains in the wood's cellular structure crack apart, releasing hydrogen gas, carbon monoxide, methane, and small amounts of other combustible compounds. This mixture, called producer gas or wood gas, is then piped directly to an engine or a burner where it combusts cleanly and completely, releasing the energy stored in the wood's molecular bonds without the smoke, particulate, and inefficiency of simple open combustion. The energy yield of properly gasified wood is dramatically higher than the energy yield of the same wood, burned in an open fire or even in a well-designed wood stove. The gasifier extracts energy from the wood that combustion leaves in the ash. A properly built and operated wood gasifier running on dry hardwood chunks produces a gas with sufficient energy density to run a stationary farm engine, power a vehicle, or fuel a heating system. From nothing more than material that most modern households send to a landfill or a brush pile. The Amish gasifier was not the industrial scale unit of the World War II era. It was a farm-scale system built from materials available on any working property, sized to the specific energy demands of a single operation, and managed by a single farmer who understood its requirements through practical experience rather than engineering education. The construction followed principles that had been documented in American agricultural engineering publications since the 1840s, and that had been refined across 3 generations of practical farm use before the petroleum industry made them commercially irrelevant. The core of the farm gasifier was a cylindrical reaction vessel, in most Amish and early American pioneer applications, built from salvaged cast iron, thick-walled steel pipe, or masonry construction for the stationary heating applications. The vessel was sized to the intended application, a small unit for cooking and heating, a larger unit for powering a stationary engine. The fuel was dry hardwood chunks, sized to approximately the volume of a closed fist. Too large and the gasification was incomplete. Too small and the material packed too tightly for proper gas flow through the reaction zones. The dryness of the fuel was not optional. Wet wood diverted the system's thermal energy into steam production rather than gasification, dropping the output gas quality below the threshold required for engine operation. Amish farmers maintained their wood fuel supply the same way they maintained every other farm input, by preparation and timing. Wood was split in late summer, stacked under shelter, and allowed to season for a minimum of 1 full drying season before being used as gasifier fuel. The preparation was not an extra step. It was part of the annual cycle of a farm that understood energy as something produced, not purchased. The economic arithmetic of wood gasification on a working farm is not complicated, but it requires thinking about energy costs over decades rather than over months, a time frame the petroleum industry has consistently worked to make feel irrelevant. A wood gasifier built from salvaged materials on an existing farm property in the 1870s had a construction cost that could be measured in days of labor and the value of repurposed cast iron. It had no ongoing fuel cost beyond the labor of splitting and seasoning wood from a woodlot that was already being managed for construction timber and fence posts. It had no supplier relationship, no delivery schedule, no price volatility tied to geopolitical events happening thousands of miles away. The same farm managed by a farmer who purchased kerosene from Standard Oil in 1880 had a different arithmetic. He paid the delivery price set by a monopoly supplier. That price increased as petroleum infrastructure expanded, and competing alternatives were progressively driven out of the market by predatory pricing, distribution control, and the active suppression of competing technologies. By 1910, the farmer who had retained his wood gasifier was paying nothing for the same energy that his neighbor was paying an increasingly controlled price for. By 1940, that gap had compounded across 60 years of fuel purchases. By today, a farmer whose family made the decision to retain wood gasification in 1880 and never entered the petroleum purchasing relationship has saved an amount that no fuel bill can capture, because there was no bill. The Amish arithmetic on this question has never been complicated. Wood grows on the farm, petroleum does not. A technology that converts farm wood into farm fuel is not a primitive solution. It is the only solution whose price remains permanently fixed at the cost of an axe and an afternoon. The suppression of wood gasification technology in the United States was not a conspiracy requiring secret meetings or explicit agreements. It was the natural outcome of an economic environment in which petroleum infrastructure investment made wood gasification progressively less convenient, less supported, and less visible until the knowledge required to build and operate a gasifier existed only in old engineering manuals and on farms that had never needed to look for a different answer. The process began with pricing. In the 1880s and 1890s, Standard Oil flooded regional markets with kerosene priced below the cost of competing fuel systems, a classic predatory pricing strategy that drove competitors out of the market, not by offering a better product, but by offering a temporarily cheaper one. Once the competing fuel infrastructure, the gasifier manufacturers, the engineering expertise, the supply chains for gasifier components, had been driven out of the commercial market by a decade of below-cost petroleum pricing, the prices returned to profitable levels. The knowledge of how to build and operate a wood gasifier did not disappear from agricultural engineering literature immediately. It disappeared gradually as the generation of farmers who had used the technology died and were not replaced by farmers who had been trained in it, because the training institutions, the agricultural colleges, the extension services, the equipment manufacturers, had all reorganized around petroleum-based farming infrastructure by the early 20th century. By 1930, wood gasification was listed in American agricultural engineering texts as a historical curiosity. By 1950, it was not listed at all. The Amish farms that retained the knowledge retained it not through institutional preservation, but through continuous practical use, the only form of preservation that actually works across generations. The practical application of wood gasification on a modern small farm or homestead does not require industrial equipment, advanced engineering knowledge, or significant capital investment. It requires understanding the four operating principles that determined whether every historical gasifier succeeded or failed, and applying those principles to whatever construction approach the available materials support. The first principle is fuel preparation. Dry hardwood chunks, sized consistently, prepared in advance. This is not negotiable. A gasifier fed wet or improperly sized fuel produces tar-laden gas that destroys engines and clogs piping. The Amish split and seasoned wood as a routine farm task, the same way they prepared seed and maintained fences, as a prerequisite for a system whose performance depended on input quality. The second principle is reaction zone temperature. The gasification chemistry requires sustained high temperature in the combustion and reduction zones. A gasifier that runs too cool produces incomplete gasification and tar. An experienced operator manages airflow through the inlet to maintain the correct reaction temperature, reading the output gas quality by its color and burn characteristics. skills developed through practice, not through instruments. The third principle is gas cooling and filtration. Producer gas exiting the gasifier is hot, laden with fine particulate and small amounts of tar vapor. Before it reaches an engine or a burner, it must be cooled to near ambient temperature and filtered to remove the particulate. Historical farm gasifier systems used simple water-jacketed cooling pipes and packed bed filters made from wood chips or straw that stripped the particulate from the gas stream. None of this required purchased components. All of it required understanding what the gas needed to be before it was useful. The fourth principle is continuous operation. A gasifier that is started, run briefly, and shut down repeatedly performs poorly and accumulates tar. The Amish ran their gasifiers continuously during working periods. A fire lit in the morning, maintained through the workday, shut down in the evening. The system rewarded consistency and punished intermittent use, the same way every biological and thermochemical system rewards the operator who understands its rhythms. The wood gasifier is not a relic of desperation or primitive alternative to real fuel. It is a thermochemical system of genuine engineering sophistication that was developed in parallel with steam power, refined across a century of commercial application, operated successfully at continental scale during the largest logistical crisis in modern history, and preserved in continuous working practice on Amish farms that never accepted the premise that fuel must be purchased. The petroleum industry did not defeat wood gasification on technical merit. It defeated it on distribution infrastructure, predatory pricing, and the institutional removal of competing knowledge from the training systems that shaped the next generation of farmers and engineers. The technology itself remained valid. The physics did not change. Wood still contains the same energy density it contained in 1840. The thermochemical process that converts it to producer gas still operates at the same efficiency it operated at during World War II. The only thing that changed was the assumption, built over a century of petroleum dependency, that this process was historical, obsolete, and irrelevant to a modern energy conversation. On Amish farms, where that assumption was never adopted, the gasifier beside the barn still runs on wood that costs nothing to produce, still powers equipment that requires no fuel delivery schedule, and still represents an energy arithmetic that has remained permanently favorable since the day it was first built. The question for any farmer or homesteader considering their energy costs is not whether wood gasification works. 500,000 wartime vehicles and 2 centuries of Amish farm operations answer that question without ambiguity. The question is whether the knowledge of how to build and operate a system that converts farm wood into farm fuel is worth recovering from the engineering manuals where it has been waiting since the petroleum industry decided it was inconvenient to teach. Leave a comment below. Do you have access to a woodlot or regular wood waste on your property? Tell me your situation. If this breakdown changed how you think about where farm energy actually comes from and who decides what it costs, subscribe. There is more thinking like this where it came from.